Okay guys, so today I have the much anticipated, somewhat requested deck profile of the pure version of White Forest Azamina Diabel in the Alliance Insight format. I want to do two things in this video. Firstly, I want to explain the ratios I've chosen and why they fit my game plan and why this may not fit your game plan, but I think this is a really good way to play the deck, especially in the pure version. And secondly, I will show you some gameplay where I go second against pure Mitsurugi, of course, Alliance Insight format, because I think it's probably going to be one of the most popular and strongest, maybe right below Malice, decks of the next format. Okay, so let's begin with the non-engine because that's simpler. I noticed a trend on Dueling Book where people are maining not only Fulos, that's been happening for a while, but also Perulia, because Mitsurugi does summon from hand. Of course, White Forest summons a lot from hand, and it's almost impossible to play around this card with a lot of your hands. But Malice also with the Ignister support, especially if they're still playing Bestials, will also either summon a bunch from hand, or they will not do that because you've disincentivized them by using Perulia, and then at least you're avoiding some of their draws. You know, like they get Cat draw 2, they get potentially like Heat Soul draw 1, Binder draw 1 just on their turn, and then if they have made Heat Soul, they're going to Heat Soul draw on your turn. So they have so much more cards than you do, and you need multiple cards to play. You need more cards to play than a deck that is better than your deck. So anything that can help you keep up with the card economy of other decks, I think is good. So I'm pairing Super Poly with these cards because even though I don't like the cost of this, because again, this is a multi-card combo deck, you want to keep as much advantage as possible, I think that you need to draw into power cards, and I think Garura especially, but also Mudragon will have decent coverage in the following meta. You can also play Almarduke, which requires 3 link monsters. So if you think of the standard Malice board, which is pretty easy to make now, where they have Allied Code Talker, which is the new name for Acode Talker, and that'll be pointing to Red Ransom, White Binder, and then either Heat Soul or Firewall based on the play they've gone for. You could, for example, Almarduke, send the Allied Code Talker, send the Firewall / Heat Soul, send the Ransom, and leave the Binder. And obviously this doesn't beat the deck because they have so many ways to play around that. Like they could GWC, bring back a Rabbit get MTP for the non-targeting banish, use MTP to banish the Binder, get back the Binder, get the draw, have the banishes. So I think that's just going to be a very challenging matchup. I really was considering playing Bell in the main deck. I think this is probably going to be a pretty good card in the next format. It hits a lot of decks, including even White Forest in very weird situations where you could be on something like your Hallowed Add Back from Grave right before you're going to do your final fusion summon for the Omni, and they Bell you here, and then you're like totally confused, and then you lose to Nib in a way that you weren't prepared for because it's not like a Imperm or Valor Nib. It's like a Bell Nib, you know, and like people don't, when you're not really expecting your opponent to do weird things, sometimes you play in weird ways. So anyhow, I think Bell has good coverage, but I didn't have the space for it. I wanted to play Imperm instead because I want more traps in the deck. Because if you summon Vengeance in the standard way, where you are banishing Curse, you can't get Curse back because it's not a Sinful Spoils card. And so if they clear the Vengeance, you want to be able to use the Vengeance again, right? And you need another trap to banish. So just having a higher main deck count for traps, I think is worth it. And obviously, if you're playing Goat, I'll get to this in a second. If you use Goat in the grave, you obviously have to banish the Goat. So that means it's mutually exclusive with the Vengeance summon. I did really want to play a second Curse, but I decided not to because I'm choosing to play triple Foolish Burial Goods. So now let's get on to the engine. Oh, by the way, you have to play Ash because of the Charmies. And you have to play, I think, 1 Valor because of Arciela. I actually want to play 2 because it does come up that you want to search 1 in your turn, 1 in their turn, but I don't think that's as necessary. It doesn't come up as often. But you should play 1 Valor, 1 Ash for the Charmies. Okay, so the thing about Foolish Burial Goods, and I think this is probably the most important thing about this deck profile, is my game plan is Diabels and Vengeance have to resolve. And they have to resolve together, okay? The Vengeance pop is not worth it unless you get the summon, but you have to control another Diabel monster for it to get the summon. And so every sequence, every line you do is always going to keep Diabel's Vengeance until the very, very end, until you force as much as possible. So the good thing about Goods is as you get interacted with and you can no longer play, if you've drawn this card, because it's at 3, if a card is at more than 1, it means you want to draw it or you're okay with drawing it. So this is at 3. It means you can still Goods, dump Curse, Curse give you Filia, Filia can give you Diabels, Diabels can dump Vengeance, and then Vengeance, of course, can just banish these 2 cards to bring itself out. So this is a fully self-contained, entirely separable mini engine. This whole Diabel package here, including the good stuff, is totally separable from the rest of your engine. Even if you can't search it, as long as you've drawn those cards, they still work. So yeah, the GOAT, I believe, is actually mandatory, because if you're playing triple goods, you don't ever want to draw a hand where you have very easy access to Diabels and Vengeance, either because you've drawn Diabels, or you've been able to search it with no issues, or you've drawn Curse, and then the goods has nothing useful to send. So GOAT is not only a good fallback, it's a card that you actually would prefer to send than Curse in many cases. For example, when you're going second, which makes goods a very uniquely positioned card, because it's not only an engine card and like the best part of your engine, but it's also a very solid kind of semi-breaker type card because of GOAT. People who played into Detonator before were familiar with trying to draw LZ plus GOAT, so you could pitch GOAT, and then because the LZ hasn't been summoned yet, you would chain GOAT and call Detonator, and then they can't Detonator, you know? So like those types of interactions, you know, calling White Binder, whatever it is that you're doing, like this card, calling the Murakamo, the Mitsurugi one, so you don't get board white. This card is extremely flexible, and so I do think you have to play one of this if you are on the goods package. Okay, the last thing to know about this is the engine requirements. This is the major downside of playing this deck. There are cards that are just not good to draw. Like, obviously, you can technically unbrick a Vengeance that you've drawn based on what's in the rest of your hand, because this is a Sinful Spoils card, so you could use it as fodder for a fusion off of Hallowed. Same thing is true for Hallowed. Like, technically, you could have drawn this with other cards that unbrick it, but you never actually want to draw these. The same is true of Sinful Spoils of the White Forest. So this is probably the thing that I'm the least sure about in this profile, is this card. You don't have to have a Sinful Spoils target to search off of LZ Azamina besides the stuff that you just have to play for the fusion, so the Wanted and the Deception. You don't have to. It is not required to make the deck play, but it is a substantial increase to your ceiling. So what I suggest is that you either play Sinful Spoils of the White Forest if you only want one target that is not Deception or Wanted, which I'm playing 2 of because I'm trying to keep as close to 40 as possible, and I'm not playing one because this can be important for the resource game, and so banishing Wanted more than once in a duel can be quite important, so that's why it's at 2 specifically. But I recommend that you either play this card or you play Morian, which has a much better resource economy but a much lower ceiling. And Morian means you don't have to play stuff like Guardian Chimera, and I don't think you should cut Sol, but you don't need to play Guardian Chimera in the pure version if you're not on Sinful Spoils of the White Forest. Other thing to mention is you could play Subversion. So Subversion is a very, very strong card. This card could be part of your breaker ratios. So like if you were maining this card, or if you're siding it for going second, this would be something you could always search off of your LZ Azamina, and even if you're going first, you have it in your hand for the crackback. It is still a Sinful Spoils card, so it can always be a material in weird cases for your Hallowed. So I feel like this is probably, if I was not playing this card, I probably would play this instead of nothing. That would be probably my idea. So yeah, okay, with the extra deck, obviously we have the Super Poly targets in here, and I think everything else is relatively standard for the pure version if you're on Sinful Spoils of the White Forest. All right, so let's get to the gameplay. And this one, I didn't think I could win this because, so I start turn and the opponent reveals the Habakiri. So this is the new one where, let me go over the effect real quick. So you can reveal this card in your hand. Okay, that's the activation procedure. Special summon 1 Mitsurugi monster from your deck, then tribute 1 monster you control. And this is the once per duel effect because obviously when those cards are tributed, they get their effects, right? And then if this card is tributed, you can add a Mitsurugi card from your deck to your hand just like all the other ones do, and then you can also special summon it just like all the other rituals do. So yeah, and then it makes it so that monsters your opponent controls lose 800 attack, which actually does kind of come up. Like this is a pretty big attack decrease. So anyhow, he activates this to special from deck. So I'm like, okay, obviously I have to Fool Loss here. I'm looking at my hand, and they're definitely cards. They're definitely Yu-Gi-Oh cards, but it's not looking too good. You know, I don't have any non-engine here. So he brings out the Sagi, tributes the Sagi. And the Sagi can trigger because it was tributed, and so he adds prayers. So I've drawn Azamina LZ, which is obviously a good extender, but into a deck that has a Raigeki and a pretty efficient resource loop, you kind of want non-engine to stop your opponent playing. So here he's added the prayers, so I know he has Habakiri in hand and prayers. And he now activates prayers. He tributes the Habakiri, presumably because he wants to get some search off of it to add the Ame. And this makes me think that maybe he has the ritual spell in hand. And he uses a secondary effect to bring back out the Sagi. Of course, that makes sense. It's free. Why would you not if you're tributing a card? And so the Habakiri will give him the fusion spell. Oh yeah, so he didn't have to have the fusion spell. He could, or the ritual spell. He could have anything because he was tributing Habakiri. So on like a new chain, because it was tributed, he can now search for the Mitsurugi ritual. So he has, he's used prayers, but he has now like basically everything to set up the board because you can use the ritual spell, tribute the Kusanagi from deck, the Mikoto from deck, and now bring out the Murakamo. Is that what it's called? Murakumo. Yeah. So this is the card that I'm afraid of because usually you need like at least 2 bodies on field with White Forest before you can do anything, and he can just Raigeki whenever he wants with prayers, right? So the Kusanagi will add back the ritual spell, and then he gets Futsu from deck to hand. And now he's going to use the mirror. So this is one of the other new ones. This one can ritual summon a reptile from your hand or grave, and then you tribute reptile monsters from your hand or field whose levels equal or exceed. And then also if any of the rituals are tributed, you can shuffle it from your grave into the deck. So it's just like a recursion, and I think people really mostly probably play this just because of pre-prep. So if you are going to be playing pre-prep, you play this card. So he brings out the Futsu, and he searches Purification, which is when I'm like, okay, I don't know if I can win this game because not everyone would main Purification. I guess in Pure, it makes more sense because if you're not on the Ryzeal cards, you're not playing stuff like Node and Cross, and so it's not like you're adding too many bricks into your deck, but I don't know, like he could be on Night Sword Serpent, or maybe Night Sword is just not necessary anymore because you have multiple really good tributes. So yeah, he has Purification, he presumably has Prayers, and he has the Futsu, which is, this is another like, just drooling cave dweller type card where you don't have to think whenever your opponent special summons, you can just keep bringing out your Mitsurugi cards from your grave. So yeah, if your opponent special summons a monster except during the damage step, you can target a reptile monster in your graveyard except itself, special summon it. So that's, a major part of the resource loop. So I look at my hand, okay, and I draw goods. So let's take stock of the situation here. He has Purification, the trap, which negates whatever and can also get his rituals to trigger, and he can come back and Raigeki my board. And then he has this like insane resource card in Futsu. So I only have goods and called by as my non-engine, and of course these are both also like kind of like engine cards in the sense this insulates you and this one could be curse. And so I decide that based on my hand, this called by has to resolve on Murakumo. It simply has to, or I lose. That's what I decide. And when you play a complex deck, you can't play around everything, okay? You have to make a decision and say, this is what I'm playing around, this is what I'm not playing around. So I'm saying this guy needs to have this card in the grave because there's not another one in the grave, and I need to call by this card. Otherwise, there's no way I win, okay? So I begin my turn by activating Foolish Burial Goods, and this is how I begin the Great Psyop, okay? And I dump the Goat. Now, I was a little bit indecisive here, but one of the things that's really good about Goat, right, is if you do not shotgun Goat, your opponent has to think about this card, okay? Because obviously, I could Goat here. I could call Murakumo, okay? Or I could Goat, I could call Futsu, all right? And the opponent may think, maybe I should Purification that, right? Because maybe the opponent is thinking, my win condition is Raigekiing the field. That's like a pretty reasonable win condition, Raigeki the field. So maybe he'll think, I need to Purification the Goat. Or maybe he thinks, I can Raigeki this pretty easily. He's not playing around the one I've called by. He's like, I could, have maybe like a prayers or something. I could get this back whenever I want. So I actually should save my Futsu because how I win the game is playing the resource loop, right? So he could be thinking a lot of different things, but he's thinking, that's the point. Okay, he's thinking about the Goat. So I'm not using Goat right now, okay? That's the first reason. The second reason is I'm not confident that I can play through a board and get to Diabels myself and dump Curse to get Vengeance. So if I don't have to use this card, this might be the trap that Vengeance banishes. This is kind of like a niche thing. It's a little bit further down the road, okay? But that's just the thought process that explains why I'm playing the way I am. So now I activate Witches, and I'm like, listen, there's no way I'm getting to combo to be summoning Azamina monsters, okay? So I don't care about the Dark Lock. So I Witches, and I search for Sylvie. I usually almost always start with Sylvie because this is one of those cards where if it gets like an Imperm / Veiler type of interruption and you have an extender, so I have LZ and I have Azamina LZ, it doesn't really matter because I'm just going to summon the card and continue exactly what I was doing anyhow. So I want to check for that Imperm or Veiler as early as possible. I don't want to get Imperm or Veilered on my like on my Diabels and then look stupid or something, So okay, so I normal summon Sylvie effect. He activates Imperm. So this means that actually he does not have another prayers. does not have another prayers on his field, because I was thinking that this was another prayers. And I know that this is purification because he searched purification, and obviously he's not going to not set the purification, right? So he has the purification and he doesn't have prayers. I was like, okay, purification is fine. Like that, he doesn't have prayers. He can still, tribute the Murakumo and then bring back and Raigeki my field. So he imperms and I don't respond because I don't need to. I have the extender. So now I go Azamina LZ, and I want to go Azamina LZ before LZ for two reasons. First of all, this will give me an earlier search for something that could be useful, and he doesn't know what my targets are, right? Like I could be playing Subversion hypothetically. There are lots of things that I could be searching again, something he has to think about, all right? The other thing is that I know that my LZ directly gives me Diabels. And for me to be able to use the goat, okay, and summon the Vengeance, I would rather actually have it as an option to use goat and be able to dump curse into the grave. I don't want to have to use goat as my fodder. So the opponent will choose to go Chainlink 2 Murakumo to make me discard a card or my effect is negated. But because I have Vengeance in hand, I just discard it because it doesn't matter, because I know that I can't fusion summon, right? I've already dark clocked myself, so it doesn't matter if this is in the hand or grave. It special summons the same way, so it's already live. Technically, I could bring out Vengeance by banishing Goat and Burial Goods, but I don't want to do that because I can't get the summon. And when you are in a losing position in Yu-Gi-Oh, like he's gone first, I haven't been able to stop anything. He has a very good resource loop established, and he has a Raigeki. You usually have to play a little bit more risky, because if you play conservative in the losing position and he's playing conservative in the winning position, you're just going to lose. Even if he plays risky in the winning position, that doesn't mean he's dropping to your level. He could also just win even harder. So the only chance I have of winning is playing a little bit riskily. So I summon my Azamina LZ, and he uses Futsu effect now to target the Kusanagi to special back. But my thought process here, right, is I already decided I'm using Called By on the Murakumo, and I now am unsure of whether or not I will be able to resolve the Diabel stuff, so I don't want to use Goat anymore. And so I've decided, you know what, if he brings these cards out, the resources they give him don't interact with me. These are all things on the crackback, so what if I can OTK him this turn? So Kusanagi comes back and gives him an ad. I go for the Silvera, and I choose to go LZ Azamina Chainlink 1 and Silvera Chainlink 2. I think this may have been a mistake, because if he has Purification, right, he obviously can Purification. And maybe what I should have done is if I put Azamina LZ Chainlink 2, this would have told me for absolute certain if he had a Veiler in hand. Because if he has a Veiler in hand and the Azamina LZ is in the grave, he can't Veiler this, right? So he would Veiler the Silvera if he doesn't want this to resolve, and he would Purification the Chainlink 2 Azamina LZ. But I put this as Chainlink 1 and this is Chainlink 2. So I'm not sure if this was a misplay, but because Silvera is not once per turn, I'm also not too worried about it. So here he goes Purification to negate and destroy the Silvera. And because he is tributing the Murakumo, and because he no longer has a prayers that he can use, I know that I am safe to resolve Called By. Obviously, if he had a prayers or a potential prayer set, and he goes Purification, tributes Murakumo, and then I go Called By, target Murakumo, and then he goes Chainlink, whatever, prayers, target Murakumo, the Murakumo is still going to come out and it can still Raigeki my field. So, this is why I'm doing it at this moment here. So the Silvera is negated and destroyed. I search for the wanted card, and now he shuffles back the mirror. It doesn't really matter. So here I activate wanted, and here basically what I'm doing is I actually just want to try to get a draw here and like try to force stuff, because the LZ is the last play I'm thinking, right? Remember, if I summon Vengeance here, even if there's nothing he can do, the Vengeance pop is not helpful. I need to summon off the Vengeance pop, so I need another Diabel monster. So I'm holding this LZ for as long as possible. So I bring out my Sylvie. Who knows, if he had Bell, he might belt the Sylvie. Who knows? So I belt the Sylvie. He's again triggering his Futsu. So he's just drooling all over himself. He's just dribbling, okay? And whatever I do, he's just using Futsu effect. So, okay, use your Futsu effect. So now he brings out this card, the Mikoto, which is the Monster Searcher. And he gets another Habakiri. So now I Witch, and So I was super debating here. I didn't want to send the field spell for Witch because, again, I was thinking, what if he has a Veiler in hand? Because I can't remember how much cards were known in his hand. If I do technically know all of them, I was assuming that there's one card unknown in his hand. So I'm playing assuming there's one card unknown in his hand that could still be a held Veiler. And he hasn't used it because he's had the answers so far, right? So if he Veilers the Witch, I don't get a spell and trap, and I cannot summon LZ, and that means I cannot get to Diabels to be able to make the summon live off of Vengeance. So I was thinking maybe I should send the Sylvie instead, leave the witches on field, guarantee that I have the Speller Trap. But I was like, you know what? Remember, I'm playing in a losing position. I have less cards. I have to play more risky. I have to keep as many bodies as possible. Otherwise, I'm probably going to lose. So I go for the riskier play here. So I witch and I set Sinful Souls of the White Forest, not because I want to, because this is the only target I'm playing that can reset itself if I send off of Sylvie, off of LZ, sorry. So now I LZ. I send Sinful Swallows of the White Forest and search for the Diabels, which I've been waiting till the absolute last minute to get. Sinful Swallows of the White Forest will reset itself, and now I go into Silvera again, because the, bringing the Sylvie out of the grave was mostly just to get rid the Silvera back in the extra deck, and then be another body so that this could go into the Silvera, right? And remember that this card says that Illusion and Spellcaster Synchro monsters you control gain 500 attack, and they have double piercing. And guess what? This whole time, this guy's been drooling all over himself with Futsu and summoning back his monsters. Look at these guys' defense, bro. 400 defense. This is garbage. 900 defense. 17 is the best they can do. Okay? So keep drooling on yourself with the Futsu play. So I Silvera and I book. And now I think, okay, he probably doesn't have anything in hand. It's probably just all engine in hand. Because this is a dangerous position for him to be in when he knows that I still have some plays left. So now I send the Sinful Spoils of the White Forest. I've already reset it. The Diabels will now dump the Curse, and Curse will give me Filius. And now I can banish the Curse and the Burial Goods to bring out my Vengeance. And here I'm thinking, you know what? I want one more draw before I go battle just to see if it changes anything. So I draw and I get an imperm. I'm like, okay, that's actually an amazing draw, because if I can't kill him for some reason, like if he goes end of main nib, he keeps all his set monsters because they're not face up, and I would lose my entire board. Actually, I would just lose. If he nibbed me, I would just lose. But again, I have to play risky. So, but I'm like, if I somehow can't win, but I can clear his board, maybe not nib, okay? Maybe I can clear his board, and for some reason I can't OTK him, Maybe he was holding Veiler for something else, and now he sees I'm going to go to battle, or I don't know, okay? So this is just a good draw, that's the point. And I never used the GOAT in the end. And remember, this was a psyop, bro. This guy was so confused, okay? This guy, he was dribbling, and then he was like, bro, what's going on? What's going on? Why is he not using GOAT? Okay, so he was confused, bro. This was part of the plan the whole time. So now I benefit from him Futsu dribbling. So now I go battle. I guess this is technically, it doesn't matter, but it's technically probably a mistake to do double piercing on one of the bigger defenses. So I attack the Sagi, but this one was, I think, 400, and this one was like 900, so I probably should have done that. So he takes 14. Now I go Vengeance, and I pop the guy with the most defense that I can't beat over to bring out the Arciela. And now the Arciela will get rid of the Filius, because this card doesn't help me anymore, and it will give me the Sinful Spoils of the White Forest, which is a really, really good card. So this was also, I forgot to mention that not only was I getting the draw off of Wanted, but because I was planning to bring out Arciela, I needed this to be in my deck, not in the grave, to get it. And then, I have Fiends and Illusions and Spellcasters on field, so it's very easy for me to fuse into something. I also have LZ and Grave, so Guardian Chimera could be an option. But more importantly for right now, this is another of the cards that gets double piercing. So now I can go attack the, 900 defense one, so he takes 42. So that's a thick, thick mummy right there. And now he has the last one that I attack, and then I can attack for game here. So, yeah, basically, listen, you need to mind game your opponent. When you're playing from a bad position, you have to play a little risky, and that's basically what I have to show for you today. I'm not sure what I'm going to do next. I may do the Fiendsmith version next, but I just wanted to show this because I know that the YCS is coming up, and I don't have the opportunity to play until probably later this year. So if you're interested in using this as a template, feel free. If you want to join the Discord, you can @ me if you need any help. And if you have any suggestions, let me know. Otherwise, thanks for watching.